about to hear a revolution in talk radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Welcome, everyone, to Liberty Talk Radio. My name is Joe Cristiano, and we welcome you to this session of Liberty Talk Radio. Today we have with us economist Andy Sutton. He's a returning guest. He's formerly of the financial community. However, he's now involved with the sole purpose of blowing the whistle on corruption and helping people around the globe become their own advocates. Today's subject is going to be modern monetary theory, MMT, and also universal basic income. Let's see if we can get Andy on the line. Andy, there you are. Andy, welcome back to Liberty Talk Radio. Finally.
We got out the duct tape and the WD-40 and a hammer and got it all working here.
Well, you know, it just seems like every week something else happens. And when I was setting up the program today for tonight's session, I realized they changed the entire format. They changed everything. And I had no idea where anything went. So I had to call the technician and say, what happened to the format, you know, for YouTube, et cetera, et cetera. He said, oh, all that changed. I said, well, thanks for telling me, you know. Well, anyway, welcome back. It's glad to see you. You know, I was listening to, actually, I was reading an article about the modern monetary theory. It was a video, audio of an NPR broadcast where they had, and I don't know who these people were. I'm not sure if they were economists or jokers, but they were talking about the modern monetary theory, and it centered around the logic, their logic at least, which was to me totally illogical, but that we worry about the amount of money we print, how much is in circulation, inflation, etc. We shouldn't, because the government has printed trillions of dollars and we haven't seen any inflation from it. You know, we go into debt by we're at $22 trillion, $23 trillion now. I mean, and that's just the government direct debt, but overall it's like $73 trillion. And they said, well, you know, if we just printed money, it would make no difference. It would make no difference whatsoever. And I said, and they went on for about 45 minutes trying to convince the audience that it made no difference how much money we printed, because we print tons of money now and nothing seems to go awry. But when you realize that our GDP is about $20 trillion, somewhere around there, $19 trillion, you know, and
give or take.
Yeah. And we claim that the inflation rate is only 2%, which is probably more like 3 or 4%. Right. We all know that. And if you take that times the, let's say, $20 trillion, we're talking about a tremendous amount of money that's being burnt right off the top. And I remember when I was young and I wanted to buy a Chevy 2 drag package. This was the hottest car on the road, and they wanted $2,750 for it, $2,700. I walked out because I thought it was a ridiculously high price. Today, that would be a $100,000 car, but there's no inflation. You know, I think people have to look at this from a long span point of view and not take the numbers that the government gives us as gospel. But I think that this modern monetary theory is the wackiest thing in the world. I don't understand it, but maybe you could explain exactly what it is, and then we could maybe talk about it a little bit more.
Pretty much what it is. They've been doing it for quite a while now. That's how this works. And I know we talked about this a little bit last time, but that's how this works. Is they've been doing this, and I said, well, you know, you're not really seeing any kind of inflation at the grocery store. They've done a really good job, I will say, of channeling, and that's one of the things that modern monetary theory I don't even like the term, espouses is basically you redirect your inflation. So it's okay to have a housing bubble. But if you had a grocery bubble, see, now that would be a problem.
Right.
So they're approaching this from the thinking that, okay, now the stock market bubble back in 2000, that was because of this type of monetary action. The blowout in 2007 through whenever, due to over leveraging, housing, the whole 9 yards, that was due to modern monetary theory. So it's been in practice for the better part of 2 decades now. And what this means, the fact that they're coming out now and actually giving it a name and saying, well, yeah, we're gonna do no, you're not going to do this. You've been doing it. And by revealing now and giving it an identity, so to speak, it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Now we've given this thing a name. That means that you're about to see a heck of a lot more of it. And it's going to be the point where you're going to start to see the punitive side of this. And that's what people aren't understanding right now because they haven't seen it yet. Right now, it sounds pretty. Hey, we can print as much money as we want. We can send everybody to college for free. We can pay for all these social welfare programs for free. Nothing costs anybody anything. People aren't even stopping them there and saying, wait a second, that's not how it works. But the way that they actually keep the inflation from hitting Main Street, or the method that they plan to use, is absolutely lethal taxation at the layers just above Main Street. So your producers of end user goods, finished goods producers, end stage raw materials, right in that area, you're going to see lethal taxation take place. So these firms won't be able to give their employees raises. And if you're going to have a hyperinflationary spiral, you need 2 things. You need a ready supply of money, which is, it's been there. It's not that it's going to be there. It's been there to get things sort of kicked off. But you need a wage price spiral. You need to have wages chasing prices continuously. So I'm not talking about the minimum wage being raised every so many years. I'm talking about being raised every so many weeks. This type of a cycle. That's what you need. And this lethal taxation that they're talking about, kind of in the back rooms. If you read the white papers, it's all over the place. If you listen to it on any of these idiotic news programs, you're not going to hear it, because that's bad. They're not going to tell you that part. It's all roses, strawberries, and cream, and oceans of lemonade, and all this kind of happy crap. But they're not going to tell you about, well, wait a second, how do we keep this off Main Street? How do we keep this from hurting the average person? How do we keep this from hurting anybody? Well, we got to pull it out of the system. This is not just an American thing. This is a global approach. America, Canada, England. I count England as separate. The people voted out. I don't give a whatever what Theresa May says. They're out of the union. So we'll count them separate. But they're in this thing too. All these major central banks, this is their MO now. They're just going to, this is basically neo-Keynesianism. So it's an extension of what Keynes justified back in the 30s. That's all this is. Yeah. And what they're doing, also to do, is to implement socialism at a very rapid pace, because, well, if you take that lethal taxation, what is that? It's redistribution. There's your socialism. So this is more than okay, I think it's done. Well, maybe not. My computer noise. So this is just more than a monetary thing. It's more than inflation. But here's the kicker. If you look at the growth of the money supply, that's true inflation. Inflation's a monetary event. Prices are a result. So if you look at the actual growth of the money supply, it has M3. You can reconstruct that. They took it away in March of 2006 to save the taxpayers money. Just as recently, a year ago, a little over a year ago now, they took away the interbank loans, the aggregate, the total of interbank loans just disappeared, flatlined. So I guess that was to save us money too, but we'll get to that at some point. When crisis hits, we're going to pull this episode up and we're going to talk about the whole interbank thing. But any M3, you can recreate it. It's not that hard. John Williams does a very good job of it. There's a bunch of people that do so, and they're pretty much within a standard deviation or so of each other. So it's pretty accurate, and it's not growing that fast. That's the kicker. It was, you go back to 2006, 2007, first part of 2008, it was growing at almost a 20% per year clip. It's now fallen to under 5. And it's been right around or under 5 for quite a bit of time here now. So you're not seeing all this massive monetary inflation. But people ask, and this is something else that needs to be real quick. People always say, all right, well, if M3 is $18 trillion or $19 trillion, how can we owe $22 trillion? That's easy. Money is transactional. It is a store and a unit of account. And where we talk about the national debt and those sorts of things, that's the unit of account. So, yeah, there's been enough transactions to equal $22,000 of federal debt. Then there's been another $15 trillion worth of transactions for mortgages outstanding. There's been another $1.6 trillion for student loans. There's been another, I think it's three and change now for credit cards, consumer credits. I mean, you just go right across the board. So you don't need, when you add all those numbers up, you don't need that many dollars in the system to owe that much money. And you can do it with a small group of people and some monopoly money and have some transactions and find out that you can run $1,000 worth of GDP with a $50 money supply. It really isn't that hard to do. And you can do the same thing with debt. You can run $1,000 worth of debt with $50 or $100 worth of money supply. So keep that in mind. Right. When people are hearing these numbers, are saying this doesn't make sense. This can't be true. Yeah, money is transactional. It's something. It's kind of a hard concept to get your mind around. I'll see if I can't come up with something a little bit better maybe for next time to actually explain how and maybe illustrate how exactly that happens. But so this is modern monetary theory. The idea is it's new Keynesianism. Keynesianism justified deficit government spending during times of recession to stimulate the economy, end the recession. And then the idea, at least according to John Maynard, was that we would stop the deficit spending. Well, they left that part out. And said, well, okay, Keynes, that's great. We'll make you a knight and all that stuff. But forget that part about short term. We're going to do this in the long horizon. We're going to take this and we're going to run it way out. In fact, we're going to run it out 90 years or more, or maybe even 100 years. Who knows how long they're going to run this thing out. So that's basically what's been going on. Keynes said it's a short-term fix. It's a Band-Aid. These guys are using it like a trauma dressing. And it's going to cause problems. It's already caused problems. Like I said, 2000, 2008, 2011, 2014, all of those, November, December of last year with stocks. There was a bubble. It blew off. It blew off very quickly. Cost a lot of people a lot of money. And people say, well, that doesn't matter because it's all the way back already almost. Yeah, but the average guy or the average gal who was sitting in the market and got scared out at 22,000, they're first getting their kind of their courage up to jump back in now that it's almost all the way back. The market has to prove itself to people before they'll invest, and that's where they make their fatal mistake.
Yeah. You know what was interesting about this? I'm sorry. What was interesting about this article by these people who were on NPR was the fact that they didn't indicate what the limit was. In other words, they say, "Oh no, we can print all." In other words, they didn't say, "Well, after 40 trillion or whatever the case." They had no numbers to back it up. In other words, they were saying, "Well, since we haven't suffered yet, it must be okay to continue. Just keep on going." Sure. So it goes to 30 trillion and 40 trillion. But what happens when the bubble bursts? They never approach that, because that could really never happen in their own mind, because, and the thing is that if people weren't concerned about inflation, why is everyone broke today? Why is everyone crowded up with credit card debt, with car loans, with student loan debt that is 20 years ago was unimaginable? I mean, it would be fairy tale stuff. And now people have debt that's inconceivable in many cases. And yet they're saying, well, there really is no inflation. No, we have no inflation, but people don't have any money. They're broke, and they're not only broke, but they're in debt. They are underwater. This is not breaking even. They're well underwater. They're drowning, and they can't breathe. And they never brought that up once in this whole article.
For the business people that are listening, or who may listen to this, it's like taking a balance sheet where you have your assets on one side, you have your liabilities and your equity on the other side. So we have assets. We have lots of liabilities. So we actually have more liabilities than we have assets. And because of that, we have negative equity. So that's basically it's underwater. That's the definition. It's like a homeowner who pays $500,000 for a house, takes out $450,000 of it as a mortgage, and the market tanks, and now the house is worth $300,000. They're underwater. So the same thing is true with the balance sheet of the vast majority of Americans. But all you hear about is how rich America is, all our assets, but you never hear it all put together into the same picture. It's all compartmentalized. Yeah. And that's part of how you do that. If you want to pull this off, that's part of how you do it. You keep things separate. Everything has its own container, so to speak. So when we're talking about the richness of America, we're panning out and showing these, huge timber forests, maybe some oil derricks, things like that, whatever. When we talk about the debt, it's far removed from that. And they explain a good portion of the federal debt away as saying, well, that's intergovernmental borrowing. So basically we robbed Peter to pay Paul. So we don't have to worry about that. We owe it to ourselves.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. No. How are you going to? Here's the thing, though. It doesn't matter who we owe it to so much as how are you going to get it? That's where the taxation of MMT comes in. And this whole, tax code rewrite here last year, I'm thinking that was the bait and switch. So that was the bait. And then not long after that, MMT came on the scene as an actual named concept. So what that's telling me is that there's definitely a playbook that's being executed here. And it has little or nothing to do with the individual players. This is way beyond any people you see on our TV screens. This is a global plan. Yeah. So it's very interesting how this thing is playing out. So when are we going to see all the inflation? When are we going to see all the taxes?
That's the question. Yeah.
What I can say, if they follow MMT as they're describing it, you won't see the lethal taxation, massive inflation. have to have a way to pull it out of the system, and that's going to be how. So, for right now, save, do your stuff, do whatever you're going to do now. You have time. We've said this many, many times before. There's always time. The best time to plant an oak tree was years ago. The second best time is right now. Yeah. So if you're thinking, oh my gosh, I got to get out of debt. Good, go for it. Go do it. And it's hard. It's hard because you're getting bombarded with ads, and the guy down the street's got this brand new this, and somebody else has a that, and you don't want everybody coming over to your house and seeing a 5-year-old television, or whatever it happens to be. This is what we've been pushed into. And people have decided to do this, but this is like this. There's a psychological term, and it escapes me at the moment, probably because the sometimers is going on. But there's a psychological term for that. We feel like we have to do these things, so you have to break out of that somehow. And I don't know how to. I never got caught up in it. Fortunate for whatever reason, I never got really into that. I never really cared about if I venture. You're probably the same way. But for people who
Andy, you froze up. You're frozen. Uh-oh. Andy, you're frozen in time. Let's see. Yep, you're frozen in time right now. You're not moving at all. So somehow, can you hear me? I guess maybe you can hear me, but you can't respond, can you? All right, we'll wait a second to see if you come back on again. And the question that I have for you when you come back on is, this universal basic income is all part of this modern monetary theory, because universal basic income is just saying we'll give money out for free, and it shouldn't affect the economy at all. In fact, it should help the economy because you're putting money in people's hands, and they'll be spending the money, and it'll improve the economy, and everyone will be more wealthy for it. And I hope you come back on again, Andy, or else we'll have to call this a night, and we'll wait just another 30 seconds or so. And I know 30 seconds is an eternity on radio, but there's this country was founded on people coming here because they wanted to work. And they wanted to build they wanted to build their own private world, if you will, monetary world. And they worked very, very hard for that. And they worked day and night, and they sacrificed, and they saved money for their children so their children can at least go to high school. And if possible, college. Very few people did, because very few people could afford that much money. But today, everything is free. And we know what that means. That means that if it's free, it's either junk or it's not going to last very long. Well, Andy, it looks like you've been frozen now on the air here. And so why don't we do this? We'll conclude this program at this time, and we'll invite you back, and we'll make arrangements maybe for next Wednesday or whenever you're available, whatever evening you're available. And we'll continue the program, and maybe we can have the electronics all fixed. And so for this time, we're going to say good evening. I hope I'm not hanging up on you, but you are frozen in time. And it's been about 3 or 4 minutes, so we're going to assume this is not going to work. I guess I got a note from you. It looks like we got stopped. I guess you're right. Well, with that, Andy, thank you very much for being on our program. We look forward to seeing you again, and good luck to you.